Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the Town of Lexington Council Work Session this evening, August 19th, 2024. Work sessions are less formal business meetings that enable council to obtain and discuss information regarding town issues from staff members and/or consultants. Like regular council meetings of council, citizens are encouraged to attend and observe work sessions. However, they do not include public hearings, but do allow for public comment at the end of the work session unless otherwise called on by council. Please note, speakers are limited to 3 minutes and a timer will be set. Council does not take an action vote on items during the work session other than to vote to place an item on the council meeting for consideration and official vote. Council work sessions are streamed live on the town's YouTube channel, and minutes are taken and posted on the town's webpage following approval of council. I am Hazel Livingston, the mayor of the town of Lexington, and I would like to introduce my fellow council members. To my left is Mayor Pro Tem Ron Williams.
Good evening.
To his left is Council Member Todd Law.
Good evening.
To his left is Council Member Jenny Michaels.
Good evening.
To my right is Council Member Todd Carnes.
Hello, Lexington.
To his right is Council Member Gavin Smith.
Good evening.
And to his right is Council Member Will Allen.
Good evening.
Council Member Allen, will you lead us for our invocation tonight?
Yes, ma'am. Everyone bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time, this beautiful day, and this time that we can serve you by serving this beautiful town that we call home. Thank you for this opportunity that we can represent these beautiful people. And please continue to guide us, grow us in wisdom, every single decision that we make so that we can glorify you in everything that we do and protect the peace and prosperity of this community, Lord. We love you so much. We pray all this in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Council Member Lau, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I will now call the meeting to order. Council met in executive session prior to the meeting where we discussed the following matters: 2 routine personnel matters, the PFAS national lawsuit, and 2 updates on pending litigation and advice regarding agenda items. No vote was taken. Do I hear a motion to ratify this report?
So moved.
Councilman Lyles makes the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Councilman Smith seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand, and it is unanimous. The first presentation is, actually, are there any deletions of items on tonight's work session agenda? And we're going to delete the second, the Utilities Environmental Protection Agency EPA requirement. Is that correct? Because you're not quite ready for that one, so we're going to delete that off the agenda tonight. And I think, was that the only thing we were deleting tonight? Okay. So our first presentation is from Interim Planning and Building Director Jessica Librand.
Good evening.
Sign regulations.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff has recently seen an increase in signage violations, specifically regarding window signage. Our current code does not have any window signage allotment. We view that as a permanent wall sign. So staff is seeking guidance from Town Council of whether or not you would like for us to further research this and take it to Planning Commission for recommendation.
Madam Mayor, Jessica, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What is this signage now as far as inside the buildings, or what does that look like?
So we've always, normally, if it's inside the glass, we try to leave it alone if it's within, if it's amenable, it's not taking up the full window. Recently, we've seen an increase in full window, which it's hard to tell if it's interior or exterior. A lot of the times when we reach out to these business owners, they don't want to remove them and put them on the interior because of the cost. Essentially what they're doing is they're turning their storefronts into billboards. And I had SI go out, we have roughly 20 to 25 businesses utilizing this signage as of date. So I'm starting to receive complaints, which then, they either have to remove it and bring it into compliance, or they need to request a variance for additional signage. So,
If I remember on one, the chief he wasn't real fond of the full window being covered because of being able to see in and safety, and he's shaking his head back there, so, I would say that would be correct since he's doing this number. But he felt that the whole window shouldn't be covered of a business so he could see in. And then, like you said, they're turning it in, it's more signage, so.
it is. I do have some examples, if you'd like to see them, of some businesses that currently have it in their windows. Is that a yes?
That's a yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Jessica, these are obviously being used as advertisements
Yes.
primarily, but I guess I want to just make this note, more of a comment, I guess, is I've seen signage like this used in instances, particularly around town and outside of town, when a building is under construction, rather than taping up the windows or something.
Right.
Using that to say coming soon or putting a logo or something like that. I know previously when I was working on a building, I think we reached out to you, and I think we could request a variance. Would that be included in this policy, or is that something we should add?
That's what I'm asking. Do you want me to research what this looks like and come up with maybe some changes to try to address this if needed, and see what the planning commission recommends? But with coming soon signs, it is, typically you are allowed a sign without a permit. And there's regulations for those types of signs, specifically with who you can advertise, architects, engineers, contractors, things of that nature, and then the business that is coming soon. So we do have a temporary signage ordinance that allows each business 60 calendar days. They can be permitted in minimum increments of 20 days at a time, and there's a size limit, and you get an additional 30 days for new businesses for this instance, like coming soon. So we're seeing this more so in regular businesses every day, using this to, mostly in commercial centers, where they're allowed only one wall sign and one tenant panel.
But this is not really for this is brands that they carry and stuff. I'm not okay with that, but.
Now, to be clear, on the coming soon sites, you have to be issued the building permit.
Correct.
Before you could install that type
That
of signage.
is correct. That ensures that you're not advertising a business that's not gone through the proper requirements to obtain a building permit, and, advertising that too early, and potentially it could fall through.
Okay. And you said it's limited to 60 days.
There's different allotment for that. During the construction period, your contractors are allowed signs out there for the whole project.
Okay.
It has to be removed. I believe it's within 7 days, but I would have to verify that.
Got it. I just think that's something that we should take into consideration if we're looking at this. I mean, it looks better than paper in the windows.
Right.
But they can't get that, so this is not acceptable, and this is not even really advertising their own business, it's just stuff they carry and things.
Most instances, it's advertising products.
Alcohol.
I say leave it like that.
Right. That's where you see a lot of it.
Leave it
So,
like it.
at one point we discussed this a couple of years back. I think we just said there was a percentage, like some of our restaurants have a sign up that, this month they've got a fried chicken sandwich back or whatever, and it doesn't cover the whole window.
We've worked with a lot of those to
Right.
put them on the inside of their stores, and
Okay.
that has been what we've seen as a loophole. If it's not on the exterior of the building, it is not seen as a permanent sign. It's interior.
Right.
And so we would not address it, but now we're having a different issue. they're using it as permanent signage and covering up their entire windows.
So you have something that says no to this right now?
We don't have anything that truly addresses window signage. We see it if it's on the exterior glass as a permanent sign. We've addressed it previously if it's covering the entire window as an architectural and appearance issue. We had a business owner that did that with bright colors, and it completely changed the exterior look of the building. And we took it before the Board of Appearance. They felt that it was signage and that it did change the overall appearance of the building, and they asked for them to remove them.
And I think that's what we need to do.
Jessica, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, whoever. So if I understand right, currently there's absolutely no regulations about any signage you put on the interior of a window. But for the exterior of a window, if you put that, my understanding is that would be at best temporary signage that would fall under the 60-day scenario. Is there any scenario where we allow
If it's
exterior signage in addition to what's normally,
we treat it as a
allowed?
permanent sign.
yeah, so is it just the case that in recent months or years, people have caught up and so they cover the entire
It's a
interior of the
trend.
window?
This is the new way of advertising.
Yeah, I think I think
it's picked up a lot, and a lot of people see it as a fun way to show. You see it with nail salons and things of that nature, dentist office.
Yeah, I think it's a really flawed policy to treat interior and exterior differently when from 5 feet they look exactly the same.
I'll disagree.
So we certainly have to make that more uniform. Are there, when people use window signage like that, that's temporary in nature, is there some kind of industry standard about coverage related to safety or things like that?
I would have to look into that, but the problem is unless you're looking at maybe your fast food restaurants, a lot of these are not temporary. I have a situation now with someone that I received a complaint about. When I reached out to them, they told me it was $3,500 to place those windows on their window signs up there. Those are not temporary signs that you're changing out regularly, unless you can just afford that. But I don't see them changing them regularly.
And
They're very
this is not
expensive.
Really, I don't think just looking at some of these is what we were kind of looking for as far as our businesses and the aesthetics we were trying to keep in the town. This is, these are things they may have inside their business. It's not actually their business. It's stuff they carry and stuff. And maybe you do need to do some research on this and talk to the planning commission and see if we can tighten it up some too.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
have we reached out to other municipalities around here?
I've not
to
yet. I
see-
was looking for guidance of whether you wanted us to spend that kind of time and research to move forward. That's what
Madam
we're
Mayor.
here for tonight.
I would be in favor of addressing the appropriate way to minimize this
To minimize this.
in a way that's fair and equitable and in the spirit of what we can do.
To match the architectural appearance.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Absolutely.
So we don't need to put this on the agenda now because it may take her a while to go through and do this, correct?
So we will enforce our code as it stands today, and you'll bring us back recommendations.
At
We
a
asking for
later date.
recommendations for
She'll bring
interior.
it back when she gets everything together for the whole.
With enforcement, are you wanting me to reach out to these business owners that are currently not in compliance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either.
I think, I don't know how we make that decision, but if we're sitting here talking about moving the goalpost, it's not the time for us to make a big compliance push if we're
yeah, but
if we're starting a process by which we're about to move the goalpost. I think that certainly a lot of these things don't meet our current standards. I think probably most of that's done out of ignorance instead of out of arrogance, that people simply don't know, and these things are expensive. So I would prefer for us to not push compliance and take the next 60 to 90 days and figure out if we're going to move the goalpost, and if we are, then those people can make those adjustments. Otherwise, we're going to have people maybe tearing a sign down that covers a full window, and then we're going to come back in 120 days and go, well, you can cover 30% of your window, and that's not going to taste good.
But
agree
when
with
you
Todd.
have something like this and they're abusing, advertising their business even more, is that fair to the man that's actually doing it right and following the rules now?
I mean, well, I mean that's an argument, but I think it's a timing deal. I think it's incumbent upon us to
Jessica,
get
how
this
long do
thing
you
solved
think it'll take?
in a reasonable amount of time so that we can bring equity to the scenario. Because I agree. I mean, if I was in Lexington and I was building a building, I'd just build, like a 10 by 20 window on the front. I wouldn't care about sign ordinance. I'd put the biggest sign in the world on there. So it's up to us to figure out what's fair and equitable. But
Okay, what about this, Jessica? I mean, you've got one here that's a hair place. That their sign, well, here's another one. Let's just use this one that's got the mega, well, I guess that one does have
That's
it.
a-
But the hair place doesn't have,
The full window coverings.
well, not only that, but it's not advertising their stuff. It's just, I mean, it's not their, I'm trying to get back to it. There it is. It doesn't even have the business on them. It's just, on most of them, it's just stuff that they carry. So why wouldn't y'all want that to come down?
well, again, I think the goalposts are about to move in
And that may
60 or
be
90
something you
days.
want to look at too, is that if it's not actually for their business, what does that look like and how many are there? I mean, are
Right.
10 different things that you carry?
I mean, we do have
Can-
allotment for product signage, but it's the product. So it can say, beer and wine. It's not going to advertise a brand.
And that's what I was getting at. Are we gonna let them have 6 different brands of wine in their window or 6 different brands of shampoo in their window? Or is it gonna be, like you said, beer and wine?
That is their business, though. I mean, at the end of the day, the hair place is there to sell 20 different places or 20 different brands of.
Well, first of all, you're not going in there unless you got
Shampoo.
a license, and second of all, they know what they're going in there to get, because they're a licensed group.
Yeah, but I mean, still at the end of the day, the hair place is there to sell 20 different brands of shampoo.
Okay, so
that
just
is
let
their
everybody
business.
put them up on everything.
I'm
they
not
do.
saying that they should be able to do that, but I don't think we should say, well, you can't put it up because you don't make that product. There's plenty of businesses in town that don't make their product, but they still sell something.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd be interested in some more research. That way we can see what other municipalities are doing. I'm sure we're not reinventing the wheel. I'd be interested in,
I've done some
Taking our
research
time.
before when we've looked at the sign ordinance, so.
yeah.
Just remember the aesthetics and
Right.
what we do in the town of Lexington and the reason we're
We would want it to
considered.
be cohesive with our
Yes.
architectural and appearance ordinance.
Please keep that in mind.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we use this time for Jessica to notify these folks that they're out of compliance and that we are working on a new policy, and that way they have time to plan or at least know that this is coming?
I think that'd be wise to solicit feedback.
Okay. We can send a letter out. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
New business items. Our first item of business is from Transportation Director Randy Edwards, Master Sign Program Phase 2.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So for those that can remember all the way back,
We're having problems with that tonight.
2019, we began a process of creating a wayfinding sign program for the downtown area, and that was considered Phase 1, which was fully implemented in 2022. And so with that, what we've brought before you is the opportunity to move forward with a second phase of a signage program, which would expand the wayfinding areas out the 378, US 1, and SC6 corridors, as well as develop guidelines and recommendations that bring together tools that can be used for staff to develop signs as projects, for example, Old Mill Trail, parking lots, those types of things that would have some homogeneous continuity Well, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but
Homogeneous.
it's been a long day. For those that are aware.
Yes.
But anyway, so just to bring some consistency in how we develop signs and what those signs would look like. So the point was that we did reach out to our company that had fabricated the wayfinding signs.
Sorry.
And
Sorry.
Kathy?
ACM was
Kathy.
tasked with, the sign program would, as this says, incorporate Lexington's blend of culture, history, architecture, and natural beauty to create some consistency in what the signs look like throughout town. ACSM has submitted a proposal for developing this program, which would identify various locations for the next phase of the wayfinding signage, and then also to provide those guidelines for future signage to be drawn from.
So I have a question. I know everybody had a bunch of questions in this. Would they be telling us locations of where to put them and that we could put them there? Or would we have to then go back and say, that's the right of way and we can put it there, or what?
All that gets vetted out so for example, relative to the wayfinding, the next phase of the wayfinding, the first wayfinding program, they went through the SCDOT process and got permits. That's part of your installation, but that is evaluated as part of your program because the mapping would all be done for where does it make sense to have wayfinding signs, especially as you extend beyond the downtown footprint. So that's been done. It was implemented with part of the one-way pair project. And then as we move forward to some of these other projects, it was anticipated that those would be part of that. We wouldn't put them up now. There wouldn't be installation is not in this proposal. It would be part of as we move forward, and it would give us a platform or plan from which to expand the wayfinding, as well as then other signage guidelines. I don't know if that.
So it would be a mapping plan, a map of,
So, yes, this would
Educate us.
include a map of where future wayfinding would go for phase two.
Yeah, I think,
But it's not just that.
yeah, I think the question is everybody's trying, what are the actual deliverables in this contract?
Okay.
There is a map of proposed signage, destinations throughout the town, perhaps. What are the other deliverables that we're contracting for?
Okay, so an actual guideline, manual, if you will, that would, a perfect example is whether it be, but parking, for example. What would our public parking lot signs look like? Do they need to be just the standard blue sign with a big P on it? Is that sufficient? Obviously, we can handle that. But it was requested that we would have some uniformity throughout town so that you would know I'm part of Lexington, and the goal was to bring their design elements all together and create a sign family from which large signs could be pulled from, small signs, medium signs, and then, for example, the perfect example I have is the temporary signs that I installed at the entrance and exit on Maiden Lane. So the big sign that says enter and the big sign that says exit were absolutely intended to be temporary. That the vision was that there would be some type of, monument sign or something that helped, this is Town Hall, something to be proud of that would reflect who we are as the town of Lexington. So that's just an example of kind of what we've done just to get by. But, the idea would be that where do signs belong? What do they need to incorporate? And then you all would get that opportunity to weigh in, just like we did on the original wayfinding. You'd have that opportunity to weigh in on a couple examples of what you're looking for that. And then the idea is that there would be a guideline then to go forward, so there isn't a subsequent debate as to, there's no parking, for example, over at the grass parking lot. There's no signage to identify what the other parking lot is.
So one of the deliverables would be they would go ahead and design an entire family of signs that were cohesive, that were all different sizes, could be used for all different purposes.
Yes, sir.
That everybody would be. So did did they provide us with like a written proposal for this work? Something,
Yes,
is there a written proposal out there?
There is.
that? Okay.
And, I mean, and having looked at this, there's no distinct rush. I mean, we could certainly bring that back because it kind of explains, what's the pieces and parts of the project.
I think it'd be helpful if that written proposal got to all of us and we could see how they laid it out and their actual deliverables, things like that.
So Randy, why don't we do that if that's okay then, if that's okay with council? Why don't we bring that back to the September work session and let you bring that to us so we can look at it?
Sure.
And ask questions, and we'll have it before then so we can all go through it and see if we have any other questions too. If that's,
Absolutely.
since you said it was no rush. Is
Yeah,
that okay with you?
I have Madam Mayor, I have one question. Is there any negotiating on this price, just moving forward?
Well, that's been, I would
Okay.
say, negotiated, but that doesn't
Okay.
mean that if we decide that we're going to reduce scope or things of that nature, you would be that it could be less.
And so you set the scope of what you wanted and
Yeah,
everything?
initially,
Okay.
Wes and myself met with them, went over what, the next phase was, and
Okay,
Madam Mayor.
yes, sir.
Randy, I remember one of my very first council meetings, we talked about the signs that would go on the, I don't know what you call them, but the
mast
arms.
Yes, sir.
The what?
Mast arms.
Yes, the mast arms, thank you. Does this include that work? Are they cohesive, or is this part of that?
So we have several, I've gotten back a cost for those signs and several different options, which just hasn't made an agenda to bring back, given, I guess, the gravity of all the other agenda items. So that's so I have gotten that. I think it was the end of June that I got that.
But as we talk about uniformity, should those not blend altogether?
That's, so again, as a traffic transportation person, the signs on the mast arms should be green and white. That is very uniform. It's across the nation. Some places do in fact branch out and do their own, but that's a special approval by SCDOT, which is certainly a task in itself. What's presented is, what was asked at the time was, could there be some options that would incorporate some other parts of the town? They have done that, building brackets around and the sign itself, and that's what we were going to bring back to present.
I would like to see, I don't know about the rest of the council, but if we're going to consider this, and we're apparently at some point going to consider the signs for the mast arms, seeing that all together, because I would like to see it all meshed together. I mean, from a branding standpoint, we should consider all the signs in the town, not just, one faction of them.
But didn't you just say that because of DOT, they were the standard green and white,
Okay, so
which is different from our branding signs?
correct. What I would propose, and this is again just my recommendation, that what it would take to get it done, the green and white will get approved. Okay, there's a few examples, but you would have to get them from DOT, take them through the process, and they get then reviewed and approved. What we had specifically discussed about, if memory serves, from a while ago, is what we were going to do is focus what you're talking about, Councilman Smith, is just the downtown area as a possible alternate. Everything out on the corridors was going to be the standard green and white. But what I would propose is that we simply bring that back next council session along with this.
I think that'd be great.
Simply, I don't want to say marry them together, but put them together as a single presentation.
And is it the same firm?
Next
that-
work session?
Next work
Yes.
session, yes.
Is it the same firm we're working with?
Yes, that's
For
the
both?
same, correct. Because they're a fabricator, designer and fabricator. And we had, selected them through an RFP process several years ago.
Great, thank you.
So we can just move this back to the September work session, okay? Is that okay with you?
Thank you.
You good?
Thanks, Randy.
Our next one is ordinance to reinstitute a 3% local accommodations tax. Assistant Town Administrator Stuart Ford, bless you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I bring forward tonight an ordinance to reinstitute a 3% local accommodations tax. This tax had been collected by the county of Lexington for about 25 years, and the money was used to go to the Columbia Convention Center. It was imposed countywide, and after the payoff of the debt for the convention center, that tax lapsed. So we're bringing you this option to reinstitute it in the town of Lexington so that you're able to take advantage of the flexibility that state law allows you for the use of local accommodations tax. The uses are related to tourism facilities and tourism infrastructure, same requirements that are in place for the hospitality tax and the statewide accommodations tax. You see those listed there in your information. You can also use the money for operation and maintenance for these facilities that are allowed by state law. I wanted to point out to you that other municipalities in our area do have this local tax. City of Casey, I know the City of Columbia, and from the latest information I could get from Revenue and Fiscal Affairs from the state of South Carolina, 28 counties and 75 municipalities have this local accommodations tax. So this draft ordinance that you have before you contemplates this going to back into effect on January 1st of next year. This would give us some time to put together the packet of things that the folks that pay the tax will have to submit to us and get everything in place, give time for folks to get their systems in place. But we wanted to bring it to you tonight to get your feedback. Now, of course, council will have the ability to determine for what purposes this money is used, much as council did with the H-tax throughout the time that we've had the H-tax. You get to determine. You're the body that will direct through your budgeting process to make sure that these things are done for the things that are most important for this community. So we bring this to you and ask you to put it on the agenda for consideration for first reading in September.
So, for discussion, because I know there needs to be some discussion, do I hear a motion so we can have some discussion on this?
I'll make a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Williams makes the motion. I think I heard Councilmember Michaels
I'll second.
seconded.
What's the
and
motion?
To put this on the the agenda.
Discuss?
Huh?
To discuss?
Well, it's to put it on the agenda, but now we'll go into discussion and it will pass. If it doesn't pass, we can back it up. But I like this because it can put some money for the police department for others. And it comes from our visitors in the town to where we can possibly give a reduction in our millage. And we can maintain, definitely not going up in our millage, and also continue to work on some road projects around. So I like this.
All of that would be permissible. Yes, ma'am.
Instead of putting all the burden on our citizens for all the people that come in the town to do things.
Madam Mayor. Go ahead.
Stuart, have you had Yes, a sir. chance to talk to any of the hotel owners in the town? We have not reached out to them at this point. Do you intend to? We can, certainly.
Has anybody done any kind of economic study on how this compares with the other municipalities that do this?
No study, no. But I do have information that we can provide to you of who in the state has it, so you can see the different locations where this is implemented.
Do we have an estimate of what kind of revenue this would generate?
We expect, based upon what the 2% statewide brings in, we believe the 3% would bring in about $400,000 per year.
Okay, thank you.
And Stuart, just for the public at large, we talk about accommodations tax, and for clarity, that's a 3% tax on hotel stays inside of the town.
Correct.
And my understanding is this 3% tax on hotel stays inside the town has been in effect for 15, 20 years and been leveraged for the Columbia Convention Center by an agreement that was made by the town, and the counties 2 decades ago, whatever that was. And those bonds were paid off, and so everybody got about a 1-year hiatus from this tax because it was not hadn't been reallocated for anything at that time. So there was a 1-year hiatus, and now we have the opportunity to allocate it for parks, roads, infrastructure. Seems like it's almost unlimited in the things it can be. I know hospitality tax is very limited in what it can be allocated for. This one has very broad parameters, and the proposal is to start it back on January 1st.
Yes, sir.
And I'm assuming if we start on January 1st, then there's going to be, according to these estimates, about $200,000 come in before we actually do a budget again. And so would we contemplate that as a council about how we would allocate the $200,000 just via an ordinance to designate that $200,000 in this fiscal year? What would be the process?
What I had in mind was that with the adoption of the ordinance, you could give direction in that final adoption, in your final motion, and that could be put in the language of the ordinance so that you would direct how the initial period would be spent, and then we could go through the budget process each year where it's specifically determined.
I do know we got a brand new large park coming online at the old mill, and we doubled the size of Virginia Hilton. And in this year's budget, we added park personnel for those kind of maintenance issues of taking care of about 20, 25 acres at this point. So certainly some need there of just trying to get some clarity, make sure everybody understands, the public understands what we're doing. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Stuart, just a question for you. So I think more of a clarification. So there's the 2% state accommodations tax.
Yes.
That is collected, and that's what citizens will see us do allocations from earlier in the year, like I think it was like $95,000 to the Ice House Amphitheater, et cetera. So this is a different tax that has been historically being collected from Lexington County that has now expired, and we are considering at this meeting tonight implementing that tax and collecting it as the town to allocate for future purposes.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make that clarification because even for me, that wasn't entirely clear. So.
Right. The 2% is statewide. It's collected by the Department of Revenue and distributed to the various entities throughout the state.
Right.
And Stuart, this helps with our parks and our police and the different people that it can be used for all of the visitors that come in and use our parks and our facilities, our ice house or whatever it is they're coming in for. I know we've got the World Series baseball coming in next August, and there'll be lots of people because I went with them to do that, and that it's going to be a huge amount of people, lots of people, and we're excited about it. But so this was a way to help the cost without us having to put the burden on our citizens within the town limits.
That is exactly right. And because of the strategic location of this town, you can imagine there is a lot of demand for hotel space in this town. And it's a lot of transient folks that are coming for events in the state capitol and here. So this is an opportunity for those that put demands upon our services to help contribute to those costs.
So can you, I know there has to be 2 readings.
Correct.
So can you give us some outlines or guidelines of how that money would be used, Rachel? And also talk to the hotels before then, have some conversations with them, which I think if they're used to paying it and they know they've been paying it all along, they will be okay.
Okay.
Madam Mayor. Stuart, do we have any idea how many hotel visitors there are in the town each year?
I couldn't answer that. I do not know.
I'm just curious how many hotel visitors there are, because this money, from my understanding, could also be used, if council so wished, to do a millage reduction, right?
Yes, that's what I said in the beginning. That
Oh,
it
I'm
could
sorry, I
be-
missed that.
I said it could be used for that, or to at least maintain no property tax increase for our citizens within the town.
Right.
And that's what we've got to keep in mind. These are actual usage fees in my mind. They're usage fees that people that come in and frequent our community pays them instead of our actual people that live here.
Right.
There may be data to your point. I know that the study was done recently in recent years about tourism in the town. So there may be data there. I just do not have it for you.
Yeah, I was just curious how that number compared to the number of citizens that we have.
Right.
And being able to do some mathematical equation for what that equivalates to each citizen.
Anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor of putting it on the agenda for September the 3rd, I think it is. It's September the 3rd? September the 3rd meeting, raise your right hand. Okay, let's see. Yes. 6-4, all opposed, and 1 opposed. Our next item up is town vehicle policy. Town Administrator Rachel Gleaton.
Yes, Mayor, I'm going to stay here so I can reference the policy on my device, if you don't mind. We periodically update our town policies. What I have for you tonight is an updated town vehicle policy, and this incorporates not only general usage guidelines and requirements for employees who use or drive a town vehicle, but it also explicitly outlines take-home vehicles and the employees who would be assigned such vehicles. This policy in general refers to all employees unless there is a specific reference for a section not being applicable for police vehicles. And so you'll see right off the bat under branding, not all police vehicles are required to have markings to indicate that they're town vehicles, and those are for public safety purposes. So unless otherwise stated for public safety reasons, this is applicable to all employees. The items contained within this policy are very common and were collected after reviewing policies from a variety of communities, not only statewide, but nationwide. And it includes everything from every employee who drives a town vehicle must have a driver's license. And if for some reason their driver's license were to be suspended, they are to let their supervisor know. It references seatbelt use. It's a reference that unfortunately sometimes have to remind folks you cannot smoke in vehicles and you should not drink alcohol while driving or operating any town vehicles. It outlines the particular steps to take if there is an accident or loss related to the town vehicle. Most of these things listed in this policy are done on a regular basis by staff. This just codifies it and allows us to reference a policy that everyone can agree upon. We have a section regarding take-home vehicles, and ultimately it says that employees who respond to emergency situations or are expected to report to work outside of normal work hours may be allowed a take-home vehicle, and it allocates that those vehicles are only able to be used in accordance with IRS guidelines, meaning those particular employees do pay taxes for the use of that vehicle. That's something we already do, but we do need to have it in our own policy for financial policy guidelines in case we are audited. It lists in section 3 of the take-home vehicle policy the various decision-making points that will be made when determining whether someone has a take-home vehicle, and then for anyone, the process for a vehicle return. At any point, a vehicle may be recalled by the administrator and the employee is to return the vehicle. So for tonight, I ask that you review, ask me any questions, make any recommended edits. And based on what we discussed tonight, I can place the policy on the September 3rd council agenda.
Do I have a motion to put this on the agenda for September the 3rd?
So moved.
Councilmember Lyles makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Smith seconds it. Any discussion? Rachel, thank you, and great job on putting this together. Any other discussion? All those in favor of putting it on the agenda, raise your right hand. And it is unanimous. Our next item up is Boards and Commissions Attendance Policy, Town Administrator Rachel Gleason.
Yes, Mayor. I know that council has discussed various points in time and requested at our last council meeting that this agenda item be brought for council's consideration tonight. It's my understanding that regularly board and commission attendance policy is discussed and that there may be interest in council for adjusting the attendance policy. So we wanted to bring this tonight as an open item for your input and discussion. What we prepared for you is a list of all of the boards and committees that we currently have, whether or not there is an attendance requirement. Not all of our boards or committees have an attendance requirement, although some of them have them and they're quite unique. And then the action that would need to be made in order to make the changes. So most of these would require an update to our ordinance, which of course would have 2 readings. But you can see there are a couple that would be administrative policy updates. So as part of the input that staff is interested in getting tonight and for consideration for you all is, do you want a uniform attendance policy for all boards and commissions? Do you want to modify them based on the type of board or commission? Those are the discussion points that we have for you, and I'll turn it over to you.
So I have a couple of questions before we vote to put this on the agenda, or how we're going to do it, I guess. So I guess it's discussion mainly. This is not necessarily to go to the September the 3rd, or could you be ready?
We could be ready for September 3rd. It really depends on the input that you all provide to us.
So if we did it by ordinance change on the ones that require that, could you put them all together and it be uniform that way?
I think does each ordinance.
Or would you have to do each ordinance?
I believe each ordinance would have to be done separately. And then actually a question I had for you, Brad, if something is related to the Planning Commission, does it have to go for their review also, or can council update the ordinance related to? Okay.
Yeah, unless it's some kind of land issue.
Okay.
Where that they need a recommendation.
Okay, so they can handle administrative.
Their procedure.
Okay, thank you.
So do most municipalities have a uniform one, or do they do it according to?
This council has a lot of boards and commissions, more than I've seen in most other communities. I'll start with that. I don't know that I've seen any specific attendance policies, and if there have been any, we have not modified them or had to take action because someone was in violation. So I have not studied the attendance policies quite this much. So I know that there has been discussion in terms of, is an attendance policy on a calendar year basis, and is there a certain number of absences that would be allowed? Can they be intermittent, or are multiple absences in a row prohibited or managed for? I know that staff has considered in preparation of this item, is there permission granted if you advise your chairperson that you'll be gone? And if so, do you get special permission for medical or for work responsibilities? Childbirth, although I suppose that would be medical. So it really just depends on how in-depth you want it to be, and if you think it's appropriate for each of these groups to have specific attendance requirements.
And we got our new in this, the youth advisory program. I mean, you will have high school students, and some of them are going to have sports or academics that cross. They're just going to. I don't think they should not be excused, and I think they should tell ahead of time. But I mean, these are volunteers on all these boards, and we're excused when we have to do something, whether it be sick, whether it be vacation, or whatever it is. So I think there's got to be something that they can say, my family vacation falls on this date, especially Planning Commission, because it changes dates according to what they have and what they don't. So as them being volunteers, I think we've got to look at this a little bit open-minded. And it's got to be some kind of excused absences for different things, not just illness. I mean, all of us have families and stuff too.
Madam Mayor, and some of these boards might only meet twice a year. I mean, some of these,
Yeah.
so it couldn't just be a blanket, you can only, miss one or two. So,
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Rachel, in your experience, is a good faith standard a generally good one to apply to this type of thing?
Generally, it is with an expectation that if you are to miss, you are to let your chairperson know. In an absence of the chairperson, you can let the staff person assigned to the committee know. It allows for both the chairperson and the staff person to track whether or not there will be a quorum, because in some cases, a meeting wouldn't be able to be achieved without a quorum, and the committees are able to manage amongst themselves if someone is chronically absent.
Have you seen that work, though? Police themselves, essentially, is it more often than not the most efficient use of managerial skills?
I have, because typically the members of the boards or commissions are quite upfront with the chairperson or the staff person, and usually for different reasons. If they let the staff person know, typically if there's something personal going on or they're swamped, and then the staff person can usually help them off of the committee, whereas the board chairperson is to whom they go when it's just related to some routine matters or verifying whether or not there'll be a quorum.
One final question. Do you know or see anything in the town of Lexington that would lead you to believe that would not be the most efficient use here, the good faith standard in our boards and commissions? Are you aware of any reason why that wouldn't work?
I am not.
Thank you.
And on top of that, I think the boards and commissions hold each other accountable too, as far as the people that are on their boards. I mean, I would think they would come talk to someone if they were having issues.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I take a different approach to this. I mean, we've had members of the community approach us about being on particular committees, and there's not open seats. Yet we have some members that don't show up to committee meetings. And I personally think that there should be some form of uniform policy to set expectations for, yes, it's a volunteer role, and I'll be very, very clear. I appreciate their service to the town and being willing to volunteer. But if we have other citizens that are willing to step in when we have some individuals that aren't showing up, there should be some sort of policy. Whatever that is, we need to come up with that. But I do believe there should be a policy. I'm not saying I have the perfect answer to the policy, but I think there should be something that's uniform across all of them so that they know what the expectation is. I don't know that holding our youth ambassadors to that, because I certainly see what you're saying is sports or this or that. I don't know, I kind of see that different than our committees. But and additionally, I mean, we have members of committees that committees hadn't met in a year. You know, I think maybe we should look at that while we're looking at the attendance policy as well. I mean, we have several committees that haven't met since I've been on council, and I've been here for a year and a half now. You know, so if there are members of those committees that aren't energized to do the work, so attendance has now just become no work at all, maybe we should have some kind of policy for that as well. You know, looking at, you know, having new members come onto the committee so that we can continue the good work of the committee, or maybe the committee needs to be disbanded.
I agree with you on some of that too. I do think some of the stuff that brought this about, of people not attending meetings when you did the research, it was not founded, of consecutive and as many missed as people thought they were. And like I said again, you still got to take into consideration sickness and other things that would be excusable. So it's got to be some kind of flexibility there. You can't just say you can't miss a meeting, especially when you're a volunteer and you're getting maybe breakfast or whatever. I don't know what they all get, but I don't think you can say you definitely can't have an excused absent. I think there's got to be something that gives people, I mean, I do think they have accountability to where they need to let the chairman or the staff person know, so I think maybe this needs to go back and some more look at it. Maybe we need to dig in and look at each one of the boards and see what has met and just look at each one of them pretty strong and get some staff opinions. What, you okay with that?
Yeah, I was going to ask if council would allow or vote for that. I'd like to see just a report on each committee when they last met, what projects they've been working on. Maybe that's not necessary
Well,
for
some of
someone like
them
the
are
planning
by legal.
commission.
Some of them are legal committees that we have
yes.
to have, okay?
Correct.
So they would be different.
So if I may interject real quick in hearing some of your comments, I think there's a couple ways to look at it. Having a uniform policy that's hard and fast, if this, then that, if you meet this, then you're off, which would require ordinance amendments, et cetera, if maybe there wasn't an administrative procedure for the staff person, for the committee. Generally, if a person misses X number, you name the number of meetings, then the staff person checks in with that individual just to make sure everything's okay. I think that because these individuals are appointed by you all by vote, I don't know that you want necessarily a hard and fast policy that says, if this, then that. Because I suppose theoretically you all would have the ability to reappoint them, if, technically speaking. So if they serve at your pleasure,
Why don't you do some more research on it and just see kind of how they do some of this other, maybe even talk to some of your board chairs.
Okay.
And see how they feel about it.
Yeah.
And get some input from them instead of us just trying to make that decision.
okay. And then I do want to follow up and get clarity on what you were referring to in terms of a report on each of the boards and commissions.
Well,
Probably
like,
the ones that are not legal, like we don't know, I personally
kind of
don't feel
like
like.
Historic Preservation
Right,
Board, when have
yeah.
they met, what have they done, are they still interested in serving, do we have something they could do?
Okay, so I would pose the same question to you all, is to take a look at what we have, and is there still a functional need for such committee? Particularly if they have not met, is it something that is still necessary?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I? Just kind of going back to the overall theme, I think within the last 3 to 6 months, when this first came up, there was a report done for the majority of our committees, and certainly these committees are not all equal. Some are almost treated as judicial processes, some have repercussions on land use, things like that. But I remember looking at the report, and I didn't see a single case of egregious absenteeism. If my memory serves me correct, we certainly looked at it, and I think that being the case, looking at all this, I don't think there's any way to legislate people's presence or absence. I think we should stay away from that and leave it at that good faith standard, because it seems to be working, and last thing I want to do is have anybody trying to determine whether or not an absence is excused or not. I just think I think we need to leave that alone. I would concur with the idea of looking at the focus and purpose of some of these committees, since we do have multiple, and finding an off-ramp if we don't have a specific task. But I didn't see a problem, so I don't think we should create something, because I do think we want to hold the great volunteers that we have, and want to be respective of life events that happen. And I think, well, for sure, everybody that we currently have serving showed to be there the vast majority of the time. I don't think I saw anybody that was under about 70%. And I think in volunteerism, that's pretty strong. Just my thoughts.
And I think you said something that just brought this to light to me too, that we could reappoint them or if the council wanted to reappoint them, even if they missed 3 or 4 meetings and didn't pass the test. So, they serve at our leisure period. So that kind of jogged my, So maybe we need to just look at it a little further and see. Talk about some of the ones.
So is there any staff directive, or are we moving on?
I'm kind of in agreement with you that I don't see a need for creating all, but maybe it is. We can talk or think about it ourselves, and y'all can do some research with some of the chairmen of maybe historic preservation, advisory. Those are the only 2 that jump out at me that haven't really met, because I think traffic still meets regular, and they have stuff going on. And then the others, all the others are required, aren't they?
I believe so. And I believe historic is quarterly. Is that right, Wes? Yep.
So they changed to quarterly?
Yes, and they've attended training together earlier this year, very recently. And then one committee that's not on here, but again, is prescribed by the state, is our state accommodations tax committee. It's very specific what they do and who can do it. So I noticed that wasn't listed on here. But yeah, they may have just decided amongst themselves the timeframes in which they meet.
And, ma'am, Rachel, Wes, actually, accommodations tax they only can have, 2 or 3 meetings because of how that all works, right? It's not like they have anything to meet on the rest of the year.
Generally, it's just necessary for them to meet once a year.
Okay.
They have a good attendance record.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything else? I would say as of right now then, just to think and maybe let's get our thoughts together about a couple of these committees and see what we want to do. I know we're going to be talking about the vision plan soon, coming up sometime, whenever we get that together, and trying to move that forward. So maybe that transfers over to the advisory committee and they have something to do then.
Good, yes.
And
Madam Mayor, I'd like to see staff at least bring back some sort of recommendations on what should happen with those committees. I mean, yes, we can look at them too, but I think the staff liaisons would know if they have active work, or maybe they could make a recommendation, as we've talked about, and as you just referenced, that maybe advisory could transition over to a vision plan update committee, or something like that. Maybe make just some recommendations for council to consider.
Okay.
so there's really only 2 of them that you would be looking at, which would be the historic and the advisory. So October, give you plenty of time.
We can do that.
Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Let me get back to where am I? The item for information purposes from Police Chief Terrence Green.
Good evening, Mayor, Council,
Good evening.
citizens of Lexington. We're going to give you a brief highlight over our 2023 annual police report. I want to highlight Lieutenant Stowe, who's over our Office of Professional Standards Unit, who put this together, who goes off all over the stats. We begin with our mission statement to provide exceptional police service while building a partnership with the community we serve. We start with that with all our officers. We had an officer start today. He was given that card. He has to know it. He has to show it. He has to do it every time he works with us. So that's is what we strive on, our mission. Also, our vision, our value statements is up on there. You guys have a copy of this book up here also. We start off with training, just to highlight. During the year of 2023, we did 9,181 hours of training. That averaged out 148 hours of training. The South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy only allows or says we only have to have 40 hours for 3 years. So we are training our guys. Another highlight in our training, 352 hours of Our training was on ethic, anti-bias, and cultural diversity, which kind of pushed the agenda. Moving on to general statistics, we had a good year with all our UCR crimes. These are the crimes that are reported to the FBI. If you see, we had a little small uptick in our larceny, but motor vehicle thefts, that's going up because of these key fobs. I went through the reports, and most of these were people leaving keys in the cars. And I'm guilty of that. I left a key in the car the other day. We just got to learn to put that key in our pockets, in the purse, somewhere from that. But that's what we saw that. Moving now to calls for service, we saw just a small decrease. We answered 12,509 calls. We did 7,259 traffic stops, which gave us a total of CAD, total of 25,000 calls we did last year. And that's down just 1%, going on 2%. Like you look at that response time, for officer response time and total response time, just to differentiate from them, officer response time is when the call is coming from dispatch to the officer. So when that officer get that call, you see that is 7 minutes and 58 cents, which is up.
How much?
7 minutes and 58 cents.
So he needs about 5 more officers because he has to get that back down to 5. Right, Chief? Or 10?
I'm not going to answer this we can record it. You'll hold me to it. And if you look at that total response time, that's when the dispatch gets the call from our citizen or from a complainant, is at 13 minutes, 29 cents, and that's also up. But look at those numbers. If you travel from 2019 to 2023, you see the uptick. We're growing. We had some turnover, but as we grow, that time will go up, and we will need to address that in the near future. So just to put that in the pen, put that down. I highlight our complaint sheet. We had 18 complaints last year in 2023. And you probably say, why would I highlight complaint? We had over 35,924 documented contacts with people in the town of Lexington. So for every complaint, that was 1 out of 1,995, which is pretty good for a police department, because we usually the bearer of bad news when we come to a call. Moving on to our Special Operation Division, we just want to highlight one of them because it's a brief. Our Special Operation Division that houses our Community Action Team, our School Resource Officer Program, and our Traffic Unit. They do a lot in our community. Moving on to Police Academy, which is under this unit. Each year we hold this. This is something vital that we do every year because a lot of people don't know what we do. And this is our way to greet them. We had an individual who came from South Africa. She told us that she was afraid of the police. And after this, after the Citizen Academy, she told us, she said, now I understand why y'all do what you do. Pretty much after the Police Citizen Academy, they become ambassadors for us, which we call volunteers in policing. Last year, they did over 300 hours of volunteering for us. And just recently, we lost one of our great Mr. James, his name escaped me, just went to his funeral, but we named our award, our VIP award, Mr. James Dawson. We name our VIP award that we showcase one volunteer each year after him, after James Dawson, Spirit of the Award for our volunteers. Couple things that our Special Operation Division hits off is our Fall Festival, which is a hit every year with the kids, a great community event. Our Toys for Tot campaigns, we get challenged on this many times, on that they love other agencies, other businesses. They'll call me up and we're gonna beat you this year. And they haven't done it yet. Not yet. So we're waiting for the challenge on this, but this is another entity that we love pursuing, and also the citizen loves giving. But most all, we like to acknowledge our greatest assets, which is our people. Police officer, you see Mark Miramata was our Art Rich Employee of the Year, but also each quarter, we highlight an officer who has gone beyond, and they are nominated by their fellow officers. So this is not something that Chief Green does or the lieutenants does. This is surveyed through the department. And also lastly, on our last page, you go on our website, this annual report is on our website for everyone to see. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, what's the other one, TikTok, whatever they do. All the other stuff that they have. I'm not a social media guy. My neighbors always say, I see you on social media, and I have no idea why I'm on there. But that's just the way we are. Any questions from our council?
Chief, I just am going to say what I always say. We have the best police department around in
Bless your
South
heart.
Carolina
Thank-
and the United
Keep
States.
bringing it. Remember, I'm budget time too.
We always try to, Chief. We always
Y'all
try
talk
to.
about
But
that money. That money be great
it
for the police
starts at the
department.
leader and goes down, and you've got some great
We got
guys
some-
and gals
We
that
got some
work
great
in there.
people, and we
Proud
hired
of
some
y'all.
great people. Law enforcement, over the last couple of years, we have went through a lot through turnover, through the COVID time. I tell you, I'm going in my 18th year, and this is the first time we went through the turnover we went through. But it finally caught up to our department because of the raises, and we appreciate the raises that you did give us to keep us competitive. But it has to be an ongoing thing. If you want the great police department, you got to be competitive.
So, Chief, how long have you been with the town?
I'm going in my 31st year.
So you've been here longer than me, but I've been through all three police chiefs. The one that hired you, Chief Roth,
Uh-huh.
and then we had
Dave.
Chief Stay, and then you. And I have to say, you're top notch.
Well, thank you. I ain't ready to go yet.
We don't want you to go yet, okay?
Don't try to push me out. 'Cause
We
I got
don't want you
30
to go. We want you to stay right here.
But no, we got a great staff, and we appreciate what y'all do for the police department. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Mayor.
All right,
So
thank you.
Chief, I will say, I was kind of surprised, Mayor. Detective Veravuti completed the draw pistol rifle instructor school with a score of 100%.
Yeah, she's great. That's when I
First
go.
female instructor to achieve a perfect score.
Yeah, when I go in the range, that's who I want to be with me. Everybody else take
well, I
advantage of
heard
me.
that, yeah.
They take advantage of me, but she shows me how to shoot the gun properly.
Yeah, awesome.
You know, Chief, they keep trying to do a fundraiser with letting the dog get us. But the person's that name rises to the top. They started with me, but they got off me, is Councilmember Lyle.
They want to see the dog bite me.
I think that's that
I
attorney
think it would be,
police thing going
yeah, I think it would be a great
I'll do it.
fundraiser for
For a
you, Chief.
fundraiser, I'll do it on the record.
I don't know, that thing hurts. It
I'm
hurts.
sure it does, but it's
It
for a
hurts.
good cause.
Yeah.
Want a toy poodle, right?
So, and this year we'll be looking at another K-9 because we had to retire one, and the current one we have now is going to be retired because they're aging out. So, so we're in it. We're right now researching that what is the best dog for the police department this year.
And just for that, for our new council members up here, do y'all know who our first K-9 was? His name was Ice.
Yeah, ice.
That was one of the first things that I pushed hard for when I got here was a K-9, and his name was Ice.
Questions? All right. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Chief.
you.
And I believe that's all we have.
One more.
One more? Hold on, let me get back over here to my page. Get me straight.
It's good news.
What do I do with it? Well, I've lost my page. Oh, no, Wes. I'm sorry, Wes. Yes.
All right. Last but not least. All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give y'all some good news that we recently received a continuation grant for two SRO officers for $216,941. This is to fully fund each of the officers, one at New Providence Elementary and the other American Leadership Academy.
Well, that is great.
Thank you.
Do I have any comments on that?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have SROs at every school within the town now. Is that an accurate statement? Thank you.
Most of those are funded through the county, their program for the school district.
Thank you, Wes. Any questions from the news media? Any comments from the public regarding items listed on the work session agenda? Any additional comments from staff?
No, Mayor.
Any comments from council? That concludes our business for tonight's work session. Thank you for watching the council work session for the town of Lexington. This meeting was held at Town Hall on Monday evening, August 19th, 2024. Without objection, we are adjourned from work session.